I will be helping with this presentation.
Yay. And then also, Brian Hudson's here.
Hi.
Hi. And he has developed some materials that go, he's developed materials that go along with the OER, and so we thought it would be cool to show people like ways in which faculty members have used the OER and developed those supplementary materials.
Introduce yourself.
Okay, sure. My name is Jennifer Schaller. Hello.
Do we want to just go around the room quickly?
Yeah, totally.
So if you want to just introduce yourself so everybody else knows who you are.
I'm Megan Barnes.
Have you used the OER before?
I have not.
Okay.
So I'm excited to learn more.
Okay.
Okay.
Jessica Mills, this will be my first semester using the OER, and I'm very excited to do it.
Awesome.
Hi, I'm Jamie Lee, and this will also be my first semester using the OER.
I'm Eleanor. I was going to use it. There was a glitch at the bookstore, so I might have to wait till next term because they ordered one for me.
Oh.
And
Students don't have to buy it.
yeah, but they probably already did. And
Oh.
it's a long story because there was an issue with another class, and I'm so stressed over that.
Oh.
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
So I'll
No
listen
more
and
extra.
see.
Hopefully we can get you on board for spring. We're trying to convert everybody.
I'm Patrick Mann, I'm using the OER.
Donnie Martinez, I'll be using it this semester.
Zach Warzek,
Depends on how this goes.
Follow him.
Hi, I'm Bob Zeller. I don't even teach English. I'm a writing tutor. I just
Oh.
want to see what it is.
Awesome. That's amazing. Great.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. So we thought we'd start with the definition. What is an OER? It's an open educational resource. There are so many that are out there, even more than when we first started compiling our specific OER. But so definition of it is teaching and learning materials that you can freely use and reuse without charge. It's really super cool, like the way that you can integrate it into a document. It's kind of loosey-goosey. It's like not as seriously. I felt loosey-goosey when I was like taking stuff and putting it into our document and then changing the wording, and you didn't have to put quotes around it. It's like really open in terms of how you use those materials. So we're going to talk a little bit about that.
So the reason why the OER originally was created was Jennifer and I were in a faculty meeting, and I raised my hand and I said, how many of you have noticed that students are coming to class without a book ever? They're just never buying one. It's week 6, 7, and 8, and my students still can't afford the book. And so Jennifer mentioned, she's like, well, I've been hearing about these OER resources, and I was like, me too. And
No, this was her. She was like, yeah. And I was like, she's excited.
So, and then Erica came by and dropped off a project comp form and said, for when you start on the OER. And I said, oh, so it got approved. So we started working on it. This graph here gives you a bit of an idea of what students are paying right now for the cost of tuition versus books. So tuition is in blue and books is in red. All right, so this is an average student at C&M right now. This information came from Sydney Gunthorpe from Academic Affairs. So on average, almost every semester, our students are paying as much for their textbooks as they are for their tuition. Only 40% of our students obtain financial aid. So that means 60% of our students are having to pay their textbooks out of pocket. All right, the Norton right now, this semester is selling for $99.50. So that gives you an idea of how much our students are paying for textbooks. So we know that students who use OER have some benefits. They are less likely to drop their courses if they're in a course where they don't have to pay for a textbook. They are more likely to take more courses in the future following semesters, especially if they're able to find courses that also use OERs. So once they are, kind of drink the Kool-Aid of OER, we know that students continue to look for courses with OER. And so what this means for us is that more tuition for C&M and higher student success rates for our students, which is the overall goal for C&M, right? We want to see our students graduate and succeed.
More benefits of OER. I mean, I'm obviously not going to go over all of this in detail, but I have a link to this and I can send it to anybody who would like to check it out. But some benefits of OER: increased student engagement and retention, more instructor control, which is really true, I promise. So like with the OER, you can, like for me in my classes, it's been super fun. Like I've kind of like fallen back in love with developing curriculum, which is weird, right? But like you can choose whatever outside readings that you'd like to supplement with the OER, and it's super fun, and the students seem more engaged too. Like I can never tell, like, you know, if they actually like what I'm assigning until I get into class and they're like, oh, I really like that. And I'm like, good, because I liked it too. So other benefits: increased capacity and momentum to create and support OER. And so these are just the 5R activities of OER. Retain, reuse, revise, remix, and redistribute. So those are some of the steps of just sort of integrating open educational resources into your classes.
So the way that Creative Commons is licensed is they use these acronyms: CC, BY, SA, NC. And essentially all these mean is, like, for this one, it means that you can use, attribute, and share. So when it's CC, BY, SA, that's usually the most broad acronym, which means you can do the most with. Sometimes when you get this NC, which is a lot of academic work, it's you can't make any profit off of it. Right? So we've been able to work with C&M so that a lot of the courses that are using OER, like the competency-based education, are able to use Creative Commons because they're not making any money off of that product. And then finally is use, attribute, share, no profit, and no changing. This one is the hardest one to kind of work with, and so we try to stay away from this for the sole purpose of, when you can't change it, you have to share it exactly the way it is. So that makes it a little bit harder to adapt for the purposes of your assignments in your class. So, but you can use it. If you find a PDF, let's say, of a prompt that you really like and you don't want to change anything, then that's a good idea when it works well. You don't see this a lot, though. It's not very common.
No.
But this is just good. So whenever you use Creative Commons, you want to pay attention to what this is, because you need to license it that way. So you don't have to use quotes, but at the bottom of your document, you're going to want to attribute that it's a Creative Commons document, because somebody else also has the ability to share it and use it. So what you're doing is you're telling the rest of the world, this is Creative Commons and you too can use it. So that's why you don't want to forget about adding this tag whenever you borrow something, because then you want other people to know that they can also use it. So it's kind of, you know, you give and you take.
At the bottom of each chapter in the OER, there's these attributions too. And so it's kind of a cool way to also, if you wanted to open the discussion with your students about attribution, you can say, well, this is how they attributed in the OER, and then they also have to do that in their own work too. So our OER is licensed. Most of the works are CC, BY, NC, SA, which just means we can't make money off of it, and we had to share it when we compiled and synthesized works from other places. When we initially started trying to find OER for English 1101, none of the texts spoke, like no one single text spoke to all of the different outcomes and the different ways in which we teach at C&M. So that's why we had to pick and choose from like 6 or 7 different ones in order to create it. Okay, sorry.
So let's say you wanted to use OER outside of the English department. So we weren't exactly sure who was all going to be here, but one of the things to first start doing is, if you want to adopt the OER, you contact your deans first, or so that they can let the textbook department know that you're going to be shifting over. What we did when we first did it is we sat down with Erica and we created a table of contents for what we thought our book was going to look like, and we got it approved from her, and then we started building and creating, and she was in on the process throughout the whole time. So that's something that you would probably want to do. You obviously want to look around and see what what information is available. The one thing we don't want any instructor to do is recreate the wheel. There's so much content available that one thing that we're learning is that it's so much easier to look and adapt than it is to create. You want to investigate. There's a lot of FYC materials, so the first year composition materials. We're trying to create holding places in ELBs so that they're more balanced. So we have just as many available documents for open resources as we do for licensed resources. So we're trying to kind of make the scales match for you guys doing that. And then decide, the one thing that's so nice about OER is you get to decide how you want it to look. So every semester I use the OER textbook, but I create a different topic for my classes. My class picks their own topic at the beginning of the semester. So I've had political topics where we looked at politicians, and I've had topics where we looked at gender and identity, and I've had topics where we look at advertising. But all the content is in that book, so now I just am looking for my supplemental sources to be able to work on that with my students. So the OER is like using the Norton. It's broken up similarly, but it's more focused on our FYC organization.
But not exactly for copyright purposes.
Right. So what we tried to do was we tried to use an idea of how comfortable it was to move through the Norton, but we tried to base the organization of the OER based on the FYC. So if you'll see, there's a whole genre approach in the OER where we have it broken up by genres, and those are mostly the genres supported or introduced in the FYC curriculum.
Yeah. And then so if you wanted to use if you're not using the OER in the fall, but you wanted to try it in the spring, whenever Trish and Becky send out the email asking what your textbook requests are, you can just tell them that you want to change to the OER. And then step 5, adopting the English OER. So the OER mostly has things on like writing process, genres, like Tammy said, it has MLA, APA style, but you still have to, the text that students analyze for genre, like the actual published essays, you're gonna have to either find those on your own, or there's a master shell in the dev server that you can check out. I have an online course there. It's like 15 weeks, and if you wanted to use any of that, or you could copy the whole thing over. And then also in ELves, there are in the CNM OER 101 folder. I think that's what it's called. If you go in there, and then there's a folder for genre readings, I have readings for the different genres of like memoir, literacy narrative, evaluation, and things like that. But I mean, that's just like one way to teach it. You can teach it in whatever way that you like.
Master shell is where? How would we
The
find
dev
it?
site.
Server.
What's
Developmental.
So cnmdev.blackboard.com.
cnm.dev?
So you have to ask to be added to it. You can just email me and say, can you add me to the shell? And then I will, or I can just, well, you should email me because I'll forget. And then I'll email DL and say, can you add Jessica Mills to the shell? And then they'll add you to it, and you can check it out and then see if you wanted to add anything. So I was worried about like copyright issues, so I didn't put any links in the shell, but I think I could have. But so the links for supplementary readings are going to be in the ELves.
But the shells are nice because they kind of have the breakdown of the scaffolding for the assignments, so all of the smaller assignments. So I took her Norton shell and I revamped it using the OER. So there's a dev shell for English 1101 and for English 1102. So let's say you wanted to start teaching in the spring and you wanted to kind of get an idea of how, be able to use your own ideas but have a shell kind of set up with just some discussion board posts, things like that, that's in there.
So other steps for adopting the English OER, so review like whatever concepts we have in there, figure out what else you would like to introduce, locate additional genre readings. This is a link to a supplementary reading anthology, and I have it in another place on this PowerPoint presentation, but it's through Lumen Learning. They have like a whole page of supplementary readings for composition courses, which are open for you to use. But then also, if you are using supplementary readings, the way that you want to do that is to link in your Blackboard shell so that you don't violate any. You can't just like take it and stick it in your shell. Like DL will totally bust you for that. They'll like not always, but PDFs they can.
So
bust
the
you.
rule is 1 semester. You can use a PDF for 1 semester. You can use a link semester after semester as long as the link is live because it's housed outside in the internet world. But if you are going to use a PDF of an article, you only get 1 semester use.
Those are rules of fair use, huh?
That's the rule of fair use. So 1 semester, and it doesn't matter how many classes that semester, but only 1 semester. After that, you have to pay. You should be paying for it. You shouldn't be using it. And so we have instructors that say, well, can I not use it for a semester and then pick it up again? You're really not supposed to. So that's why it's so nice if the PDF lives in the internet world, just link to the internet world. You know, we have an active link that goes there. The reason why we did not do that in the OER is because CNM is not paying somebody to keep the OER updated live semester after semester after semester. At some point, Jennifer and I will not be working daily with the OER. And so one of Erica's requests was that we did not include linked material in the OER because that makes it too cumbersome to try to keep it a live document. So I guess the biggest thing here is that you just want to pay attention to what you're borrowing that's not OER and make sure, just like our students, we tell them you always have to cite it. So attribution for Creative Commons is fairly easy. You can include the attribution list at the bottom. We did a signal phrase at the beginning of every chapter to let students know where it came from, also to let faculty know where it came from. So if you want to go look at that entire book because you like that specific chapter and you kind of want to see what else that book offers, you have access to it. But with the fair use stuff, it's more rigid APA MLA citation guidelines.
That was the hardest part for me to wrap my head around because MLA style, you have it's so specific in how you cite and how you attribute. Creative Commons, they're like, just include the title, the author, the date. You can write it however you want, and then you link to the Creative Commons license. Like I couldn't get past that. So because I am neurotic, I had to come up with my own citation format that I used for each and every chapter. I know, right? Because I wanted it to be the same, right? There should be a pattern.
Consistency is okay, Jennifer.
Right? Yeah.
Well, because we're modeling for our students too. So that was
true.
a big thing. We were trying to model for the students. We're not going to expect you to cite and then us not do it right.
And I ran it by Mary Bates with Barney too. I was like, how does this look? And then she changed it up too. She was like, do it this way. And I was like, okay, thank you.
So the resources that you have available right now are there's information on ELBS. So if you didn't know, if you go into ELBS, there is a Norton sequence and you'll also see an OER sequence. And what that is that the readings that were attached to the Norton have now been paired with the OER chapters. So you may not have the exact same, oftentimes it's the exact same assignment, just channeled to the right chapters, so that you're not having to pair through and try and see what chapter in the Norton most closely resembles this chapter. We've kind of done that for you. There's also, like Jennifer said, we do have sample readings that are available online that you can use with fair use guidelines. There's also some Creative Commons readings on there that we have found. We have a couple of readings in the textbook and we have a couple of examples of student writing in the textbook, but a lot more is we're trying to, like I said, we're trying to work on balancing this. So you definitely want to play with that. The other thing that's really nice for our students is you can use the CNM databases. So you can link to any articles or work in the CNM databases, and students have access to that even when they're off campus as long as they have internet access. So a lot of what we're trying to work on also for our students specifically in ELBS is finding information from the databases that work well. Jennifer has a lot of really great stuff for advertising, and you just mentioned one in the last class for student loan debt. So we're trying to put that in there also so that you have more links. So the library databases is a really good resource for content if you want examples of genre readings and writing and articles and things that will support what the OER doesn't have. So it really does help balance it out.
Like the Media Education Foundation is a really cool database that just has all films, and the people that they cite a lot of times are academics or people working in that specific industry. So there's the student loan one that's really good. It's called Default. And then I also use for the advertising sequence in 1102 for my online classes, I use advertising at the edge of the apocalypse, which is cool for them to they can analyze something different besides a written text. They can analyze the argument in a documentary and then maybe compare that with something else. And it's just a way to kind of just spice it up, right? An online 1102 class. So,
Do those database links, if you put those links in, are they stable?
yeah.
Mm-hmm. They're more stable. So Mary says they paid extra money at the library covers extra finances just to try to keep those links more stable. So she said that those links are at least twice as stable as any internet link. So they are far more reliable.
I copy them over semester after semester, and they're usually pretty fine. The only thing like the links will be fine, but sometimes the movies might update. So advertising at the edge of the apocalypse before it was advertising at the end of the world, and that was 10 years earlier. And I didn't realize there was a new one until like after I'd shown the old one. So there's that. I mean, you just have to maybe like keep up with the most
Check
current
the links
stuff,
yourself.
right? Yeah, but the link was fine to the old stuff.
So statistics, do you want to get some data? We sat down with Opie and we wanted to make sure a general textbook can be, you know, publishers may spend hundreds of thousands of dollars creating a textbook. Obviously, C&M didn't have the budget to do that. We worked a lot of college service hours, some project comp. We worked really hard. So what we were most interested in is we wanted to make sure that our OER wasn't negatively impacting students. That was our biggest thing. Like, before we move on with this and we really start pushing and supporting the further development, we want to make sure that we're not harming our students. And so we started looking at the data. So we collected all the data for these 2 semesters, fall 2017 and spring 2018. We had 2,271 students use the OER. That was 112 sections, and that was 32% of the sections of English taught. And so we saved students $226,000 in that 1 year, in those 2 semesters. So what we learned is the orange is the traditional cost and the blue is our OER. And this is the proportion passing by resource. So 81% of students with the traditional textbook passed, and 70.78% passed. This is considered non-significant, is what we're being told by Opie. So we didn't statistically harm them. It was a little bit vice versa for 1102. 0.85% succeeded with the traditional and 0.86 with the OER. So what it means is faculty are amazing. Faculty are using the OER, and there are some downfalls and there are some things that make it harder, but the faculty is doing so good using this resource and still being able to engage our students. So we're not negatively impacting students. We are positively impacting students, which is what we wanted to make sure we are doing. This information will continue collecting data, and we're hoping these numbers will continue to rise as we are able to create more ancillary materials for the OER.
Okay, and this is just what's in the OER. So we have our introduction to college writing. Part 2 talks about writing processes, different steps to writing. 1101, part 3 talks about different genres for 1101. Part 4 transitions into the 1102 sections. We didn't call these, though, the 1102 genres because teachers in 1101 might want to teach analysis and argumentation. So, but 4, 5, and 6 were more geared toward 1102. So part 4 is analysis and critical thinking, applying those thesis development skills. Part 5 talks about argument. And then part 6 has a research process. We wanted for the OER to be geared directly toward C&M students, so it covered the outcomes, but also the research process section has actual links in it to C&M resources about using the library. And in the introduction to college writing too. So, do you guys have any questions? No? And then we are working on a grammar.
So we just got a $10,000 grant from Bradbury's Thumb, and so we're using that to finalize the grammar textbook, which we had compiled, but we weren't able to do final touches. And one thing we learned about grammar textbooks is that what's available is a little bit old and the language was very biased. So we had to make some changes. So what we're going to do is we're going to be able to focus on organizing it better this term and then creating it so we'll also live in my text next to the OER. So the documents are too big for it to all be one book, which will be nice because hopefully other disciplines will be able to pull information from the grammar. And so our goal is to also have grammar quizzes built into Blackboard for the new grammar book.
And DL literally said that the grammar section scared them. They're like, can we hold off on this? It's really scary. We're like, it's just grammar. But it does need more organization, and I think just taking a step back and thinking about how it could be more interactive too.
Right.
So hopefully by this
Hopefully there'll be a part 7 on here soon.
Yeah. wanted some resources, here they are.
So Jen can go ahead and send this to you. We actually have created a SharePoint site. Jennifer created a SharePoint site, and in that SharePoint site, this presentation lives there, so it's there. And we also have additional resources that we'll show you, which includes some very random quizzes that I created, but they were really created for my 1102s, so they're kind of randomly compiled on the chapters, but you could go in and very easily tell what chapter, what question is about, and use those quizzes as reading quizzes. I think I have 9 or 10 of them built already, and so those are in there. But these are different resources for where to find information. So this Lumen Learning site, English Composition 1 from Lumen Learning, is really nice because it includes content, but it also includes videos that supports the content. And so that's kind of nice, especially if you're teaching online, because you already know that those videos are Creative Commons and that you can share them and embed them freely. Anything else in here that you know?
Media Education Foundation. This is the link to the library page at at CNN if you wanted to check out the videos on there. They're really cool. A lot of them are like sociology, communications, but you can use the topics and they can apply to your sequences if you can focus them that way. This thematic reading anthology is from Lumen Learning. There's actual literacy narratives that are on here too. There's like a whole section of them. I haven't checked them out yet. I don't know how dated they are. But this is a link to Project Gutenberg, which is a crazy big site of works whose copyrights have expired and you can use them in your classes. A lot of them are like 100 years old. So I told my friend about the site and she was like, is it all dead white males? And I was like, maybe, but it's free. And she was like, I don't like dead white males. And I was like, but it's awesome. So it's still awesome, even though it's populated by dead white males. So, and then that is the link to the English OER.
So you can also get to the English OER through the CNM English webpage. So it's www.cnm.edu/English. That's the easiest way to get there.
So I'm teaching all face-to-face courses. Can I just have this link on my welcome page of the Blackboard?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And the other thing that's nice is if you want to just link it that way, you can, but now with it in my text, you can link to chapters, which was an issue that some faculty were not happy with in the past, which I totally understand, which is super frustrating, and that's why I spent 5 hours updating my 1102 shell yesterday, because now you can link to specific chapters. So you can, if you want them to read something specifically, let's say you have week 2 reading assignments, you can link to the specific chapter so that it's just much more usable.
Organizational.
If you get to the book, the one thing that's really nice is sometimes it's kind of hard to see where to get to the table of contents. On the bottom left hand of the screen, there's a square with 3 lines. It's kind of hidden because you're so looking at the picture, but it pops up the table of contents and you can skim through the book that way also. So it's really nice.
It's a hamburger.
Yes, which we didn't know. That's what it's called. It's called a hamburger.
The 3 lines.
The 3 lines is called a hamburger.
Oh, that's cute.
Isn't it though?
Yeah. So yes, you can link them here this way. I would also give them the information about how to get to it from the English website because that's very long and cnm.edu/English is very short. And so they scroll down and it's right in the middle of the page and they can click on it. One thing to know is it does say if you want to register. The reason why it asks you that question is because one of the books on that page, Brandon Morgan's, is a for-profit book. They are trying to recoup the monies that he spent to create it. So students have to pay for that book. Our book you don't have to pay for, so just tell them to ignore it, to just click on the cover and go in. They don't have to even register, they don't ever have to do that. So that's just something, a good reminder you might want to tell students on the first day because they kind of get nervous when they see that and then they back off. Just tell them ignore it and click on the book and just start moving through.
Just start scrolling down. I thought it was also they could register if they wanted to like keep track of how long they were reading. I thought there was maybe some analytics in there.
I don't know that Jacob's gotten that working yet. I don't know, but there might be.
Well, that's okay.
So if you wanted to, you might want to talk to DL, to Jacob or Thomas, and see if you have your students log in the first day, if you can start paying attention to how long they read. When we first created the textbook, we were able to monitor how long our students were staying on a page. And I know this is going to sound crazy, but our students were staying logged in for over 5 minutes. On average, to a website and any ebook is 2. So the fact that we were able to keep students in for 5 minutes was impressive. I know. Overall, the average time spent during a session was 12 minutes. Active movement was 5.
That's good. That's good news.
My jaw, what?
So there's more research about scanning and student scanning, and so the idea that we're able to keep them in for 5 minutes was positive for us, and that we had 12-minute blocks. The biggest thing that we're hearing back from students is that they can take it with them everywhere. It's on their phone. They can download if they want to, or they can to their computer at home if they want, or they always have access if they have internet access or their phone. So we had students tell us all the time, I was more successful because I was able to do my reading homework at a soccer game. At Jiffy Lube while my oil was getting changed, things like that. So that's the number one reason why we have heard that students like it and they're not carrying around a big heavy book.
I have kind of a related question. How do you, or if you could share, how do you deal with like them using it in class? Like, are they required to bring devices?
So this is how I tackle it. I tell my students that they can have their phones out in classes if they're doing something with it. If I see them not using it for texting, anything else, I'm not shy about saying, hey, put your phone away, let's stay focused. What I do is my students who bring laptops, I make them team leaders. I break them out into assignments almost every class. I ask who has a laptop today, they raise their hands. All right, your team leader 1, 2, and 3, they break off into groups. They open up their laptop, get their textbook up, and then they use whatever textbook or online site we're using. I'm very mobile friendly in my classroom because I'm of the belief that I'm not going to be able to get rid of it completely, so might as well benefit from it. And they actually, when they know they can use their phone to find information in class, it tends to take away the need to be on Snapchat a little bit more. So I've had success with that. There are faculty who have done BYOD with Anna Galetli using the English OER with success. I know that Sue Fox used the OER, but she did a lab portion where she used the lab quite a bit, and then they did lab work with the OER up when they were doing writing so that they had access to, API, MLA citation guidelines and the research information they needed. So there's a lot of different ways you can do it. I also have, and inevitably you're gonna have students every semester who will want to print specific chapters, and they can download the PDF and do that as well. We've been told it's about $25 to print the entire textbook. So we'll have students that may want to do that and just spend the $25 to have a print copy. So there's a couple of different options. If we have a student who has special needs, we can get a request from Erica to have the DPC print a copy of it for them.
Will they print it in color? Will they print it two-sided?
What's cheapest? They will do that.
Mm-hmm.
How many pages are in?
Almost over 500.
Was that with or without the grammar?
That's without the grammar. I
Oh
think.
my gosh, that's why they. So if you catch the OER bug, it's contagious, guys. Like, especially when you see all the stuff out there. Like, I totally super geek out on it. It's so fun. So these are repositories if you wanted to look for more stuff. So these are just places that house things. Sailor Open Textbooks, I just found like a bunch of cool comp and grammar stuff, and if it's CCBY, like you can take it and use it in your classrooms. So here's some.
So this is kind of what we did to create the OER. We went to all of these websites and found the best stuff and used that as the framework and then wrote around that. So the OER has a lot of introductions written by Jennifer and I, and some chapters written by us. Like Jennifer wrote a lot of the memoir chapter, right, and then I wrote a lot of the peer review chapters. And so those, the framework of it is finding the best of all of these. So we spent one semester reading through about 25 English textbooks and just pulling out the chapter we liked best from all of those and then trying to create a cohesive voice once we selected the text we like. So that's why we're familiar with all of these, because we play in them a lot.
The open course library is cool. It's actual whole open courses, but it's not super like visually user friendly, but a teacher could use the stuff. Here's more repositories and everything is open, like this window. So BC Open Campus is awesome. They have some really cool books. And like you could take maybe chapters from different disciplines and integrate them into your courses as well. I mean, if the topic applied. So there's a bunch of different ways that you can use it, and then here's even more. So like Wikibooks, We used a wiki book. It was rhetorical,
Analysis.
rhetoric and writing.
Yeah, I think so.
And it had some like good stuff in it. And so, I mean, whatever we could use, we grabbed. Like I think part of the evaluation chapter was actually from a wiki book. Skills Commons is cool. It's for workforce training materials.
Sunny's really good because they just came out with a new poetry OER. And so for people who are interested in having a section on poetry or creative writing, or in just enhancing their literary narrative with some creative writing techniques about, you know, different aspects of how to create that story, Sunny is another really good one that's doing a lot of work.
So these are just all things you could use and check out if you like. Oh, we're to Brian. Okay, so now tossing it to Brian, who created materials to go with his OER.
So I just have to let you guys know that I was using the OER before it was cool, when it was still on Google Docs, so, yeah.
He edited the
So you had a
OER.
hard time.
No, what I really, what inspired me the most about the OER was particularly the material on analysis. I think chapter 19, What is Analysis, goes into much more detail, especially for our students, than the Norton did. I think the Norton's definition of analysis is
It's
breaking
lame.
something into constituent parts, which I didn't understand as a grad student, and I don't expect my students to understand here. So what I did is, I like how they have broken down analysis into very particular parts here. And so what I ended up doing, so examples, explanations, and assertions is the way that it's broken down into chapter 19. So I supplemented that a little bit with the way we used to teach Comp2 back at OU. We used a specific version of stasis theory that Ramage, Bean, and Johnson used in writing their textbook writing arguments. Don't ask me to remember the edition because I don't. But it gives the students a very clear way forward into understanding analysis, a lot clearer than just breaking something into its constituent parts. I have several different, what I call visual heuristics here, or clickable heuristics, because each one of these words here, you can click on them and they go to a definition of the word. So of course this is just the rhetorical triangle, we should all be familiar with that, but moving from each one of these possibilities, if we focus on ethos, we need to find examples in the text of ethos, explain those examples, and then I've broken the assertions into sub-assertions and main assertions. And I'll go ahead and click on a few of these. So this is probably my favorite one because I found funny memes for each one of these, right? So I'm hoping not only the visual heuristic will help the students remember these terms, but the funny memes will help as well. So this is actually just a static image. Let me click on my website here. So if we click on ethos, we have the credible Hulk. He's not the incredible Hulk, he's the credible Hulk. Because he backs up his assertions with facts and documented sources. So I took the definition, I think I took the definition straight out of the OER for ethos, did I? Yeah, I did, okay. And I actually credited you guys.
You did, I see
Yeah,
that
I did,
attribution.
And then you can scroll down here and click on the other terms. This is the best meme for pathos I could find. That is all Sarah McLachlan is using as pathos when she has those commercials, right? She's about to ruin your entire day. So I just cut and paste that into here and then link to the OER. Now some of this stuff, I'm not as proper when it comes to using too much using too many resources, because this is hosted on my own domain. So some of this stuff I've actually cited from Pearson's literature, from another guide to literary, for some of my other heuristics, and I just quote the whole thing. It's probably quoting too much. The DL will probably have a fit, but I don't put it in Blackboard. I put it on my own domain, so it doesn't matter. They can send me a cease and desist letter, whatever. The main assertion, oops, here we go. So this is probably the most complicated part of the analysis because I do make a distinction between sub and main assertions, but I also have formulas for each of the types of assertions that can be made. So this looks like a whole lot of information. This is a Fry meme, by the way, if you're not familiar. If you're not familiar with any of these memes too, you can click on any of the memes and it gives you the history of Know Your Meme. So,
Oh, wow.
so if you want to brush up on your meme history, the students can do that too. I give them formulas for what types of assertions can be made. So both the sub-assertions and the main assertions have to be able to boil it down to one of these types. Now, is this reductive? Yeah, Stasis theory is a little reductive. Is it too reductive for our 1102 students? I don't think so. And I think that because we work on this all semester, we're constantly talking about, okay, was that an ethical assertion that you're making about this text? Is that an evaluative? Okay, fit it into the formula. And because we can do that, by the end of 15 weeks, they are very familiar with being able to choose an assertion. Now, what I like to be able to do is say, well, you don't have to be this formulaic when you're writing your theses, right? Just make sure that it makes sense as far as one of these formulas. You can qualify it, you can word it differently, as long as we can paraphrase it and fit it into one of these formulas, we're good. So this is basically what I originally, when I started reading the textbook and I saw that they had broken down analysis into very useful ways for my students, I created what I called the analytic triangle, just with examples, explanations, sub-assertion, and main assertion. Basing it off the rhetorical triangle. But I also created these clickable links, right? It's very simple. If you can go to, actually taught a session on it earlier, you can go to image-map.net, create the code for all these links. Just pick your points, pick the URL you want it to go to, easy peasy.
Do you mind us sharing these and using them in our classes? Do you mind us sharing and using
please
this in
do.
our class?
In fact, let me go back. All heuristics are
Oh, nice.
under Creative Commons license. I actually put them on each page because I have a lot of, I quote quite a bit from some published textbooks. So, just be careful about that in case they come after you guys for me quoting too much. But you can blame it on me.
We'll just link to you and we'll be
That'll
good.
work. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's just one example of a heuristic. I have heuristics that I created for 4 analytical languages because I found that I was asking my students to do analysis without giving them any kind of tools to do analysis, right? I'm just like, analyze it. They're like, how? And I was like, I don't know, let's just do it. I know when I see it. So I created several different analytical languages, and we moved through these in the different texts that we look at for Comp 2. So the cheesier the better, I say, when it comes to names. So this is the lyrical rectangle, which I think has a lyrical kind of quality to the name, right? But it's just based on poetic terms, right? Sound, imagery, rhythm, and diction. So if you click on any of these terms, well, if Gloria Estefan is right, and the rhythm really does get you. I spent a lot of time finding these memes. I'm pretty proud of them. But you can see I quote pretty liberally. This is from Perrin's Literature, Structure, Sound, and Sense, 9th edition. I quote, I do link to the text, and I'm just waiting for a cease and desist letter, but I do quote pretty liberally from these textbooks.
I think, isn't the rule less than 10%?
I think you're
That's
good.
what I think,
I think
yeah.
you're good.
That's what I'm going with,
I
yeah.
think you're good.
This is a block quote, right?
Who's gonna go after you?
Nobody.
Like legitimately, like anyone who has that much free time to be like,
Right.
wait a minute.
Right.
Just to be aware, though,
This guy is teaching poetry at college level, let's get him.
CNN's distance learning, if you were to put some of this in there, they do investigate. I had an image in one, and I got called out for having an image in that wasn't Creative Commons, and I was told I had to immediately, it was a Snoopy comic image, and it was talking about reading is hard. And so, but I was immediately told I had to take it out. They contacted my dean. It was like,
I think
It's an image.
I think they are gung-ho and they go above and beyond
right.
fair use. Because
Yes.
the way I read fair use and have always used it is less than 10%, you're okay.
And for education.
Yeah.
So I'm not making profit, I'm good. That's my
I don't know why
philosophy.
that DL is so gung ho about it. I think part of it is a global
Liability.
initiative. Like when they go global, they are trying to cover themselves and just in case. I'm not sure.
So that would be it. I don't think anybody individually would see your site and do this, but it would be something like you said to be careful about how much you link into Blackboard. If you want to make the choice, maybe it's better to link to Brian's website rather than linking any of the specifics in there. Like any of the heuristics that you created that are Creative Commons, you could put all of those in your Blackboard shells.
Yeah, you could
But-
steal the code and put them in the Blackboard shells,
Absolutely.
absolutely, and I can show you how to do that. Or you can just link to it, I don't care either way. You know, like you said, I'm not using enough I'm not posting the PDF of the book or anything, so the
Right.
publisher isn't gonna come after me, and I even attribute to the publisher, so it's, if anything, it's helping sales. Like, I doubt any of our students are gonna go buy a $100 book on Introduction to Literature, but they might.
So does DL scrutinize web enhanced classes also? Or just all, like all?
Anything
housed in Blackboard.
Okay.
I found they do it when you ask them to copy it over though. Like if you want the shell copied over, that's whenever I get.
Oh, okay.
But I don't know if they do it at other times.
Oh.
Because my thought on fair use specifically for scholarly materials, like if you have PDFs of articles, like that is like the definition of fair use,
Right.
right?
I mean, if
Like
you're-
Jill would
But
look
fair
at that
use
and
is
be
only
like,
one term at a time, because
But
if you're
that's-
using it consistently, then you are taking advantage of the fair use license.
I think that's a C&M rule, I don't think it's a fair use rule, because I've never heard
But
of
so that's a
it.
CNN thing where if you have,
Other colleges
you know,
have trouble
a
with this.
particular, say you have a journal article and you use it across your courses.
You can link it, as long as you link it to their home base where they have it, because then they're getting the traffic and they're getting the hits.
Okay.
Then nobody cares. But when you put a PDF in your document, you've totally kicked out the home source for that document. So that internet site, whether it's a school, a library, is losing all traffic to their site.
Well,
So like New York Times, the reason it really created was like for more New York Times articles, they wanted the traffic to their site, so people were invested in their site for, the advertising dollars they would get.
Want the clicks.
Yeah, the clicks. So that's really, when the research we've done and talking to Mary and learning about it, that's really what it is. It's about these websites have said, wait a minute, I'm losing all this traffic because you're posting it on your board and no one's coming to see it here anymore. So other colleges have gotten in trouble for that. Mostly from using New York Times seems to be the one that's the most common, because what they're saying is when you're posting these PDFs, we're not getting any, we're losing traffic to our site, and we make money to be able to have these articles free and available, and not all of them are, but the ones that are, based on the traffic and the advertising dollars we get from the traffic to our site.
The other option is just posting it on your own website and saying the hell with it, like I did.
Wait, there's a third option. You could also link to the library and have them get to it that way, and then that wouldn't, because the library pays for access to the databases.
I mean,
So you
that's
can
one
get
where-
scholarly work that way.
That's one where it feels kind of weird because if you are using scholarly articles from journals that are available through the database, then the difference between putting a link to it and a PDF to it when the student can download the PDF
I
is
think
kind of
because they're getting credit
all
for
about
the
the
number of
clicks.
times it's getting opened because CNN is paying attention to what databases students and faculty are using because they're paying for them. So if a database doesn't get any hits for a year, that's why we see databases go away from the library. So I think part of that is also research based within the school maybe.
Yeah, I didn't know that actually. I thought it was just something CNN made up because I'd never heard of it. Oh, that makes
So
sense.
it was,
Well,
I think
people aren't
that-
getting their clicks.
Yeah,
that's why.
it was New York Times did a big thing where they attacked a couple colleges who were weren't linking, who were including entire articles within their
Right.
learning dev shells, and that's why. And so that's kind of where that rule.
Okay. I mean, it makes sense. I understand that. I'm still gonna
Oh yeah.
cite a bunch of stuff on my website.
We
So
love
this is the one. So I have a couple of the heuristics. I have what I call the cinematic star. Like I said, cheesy is good because it makes them remember. So all the basics of film, and then my personal favorite, the literary web. All of these heuristics have the same core, right? They're built on the same type of analytic triangle, moving from examples to explanation to sub-assertion, the main assertion, and you click on any of these, right, and any of the heuristics, Oh, this one actually isn't as functional as the other ones. I need to fix it. And it explains what each one of these elements are. But I'm using the language of the OER for analysis here. Oh, this is my favorite for literary. So this is my favorite meme for conflict. I'll read it to you. At the Thanksgiving table, me, wow, it's so nice to see everyone. Other me, ask who they voted for. I love this because it shows not only internal but external conflict, right? Internal conflict because that's what the meme's about, Kermit against evil Kermit. But external conflict because you know that's what's going to happen after they ask who you voted for at the dinner table. But yeah, these are all, I hope you use them. My students, I can see the spike in hits when I ask the students to use them in class. They can use them on their mobile because I've used a WordPress plugin so that it works on their mobile phones. It's great. And I want to work with to make more types of heuristics. I was thinking about making one about ludology, about game studies, and then one about visual rhetoric with, not visual rhetoric, kind of like visual rhetoric, but visual communications. Yeah, but I got tired after 4 of them.
Yes, those are amazing.
But I use these in conjunction with the OER, and they wouldn't exist without the OER.
Thank you so much, Brian. So this is just one, part of the reason why we invited Brian is because, one, he was one of our active editors for the OER. So when, part of the reason why the Part 2, 1102 section is so strong is because he sent me a very long email saying, all of this needs fixed. And it was such refreshing, important changes in content because I've been looking at it and Jennifer had been looking at it for so long. It was hard for us to be able to look at it from a new perspective anymore. So getting someone else's perception on it was so important. It was kind of neat because so much about what we're teaching in 1102 is creating a assertion based on your perception. What do you immediately think about when you read this book? Well, start there. What were your initial thoughts? Start there. There's something there. So it was kind of nice to see somebody else who was able to look at it with fresh eyes and be able to say, this is what needs fixed. So it's been great. And then it's nice to see what else he's been able to do. Do you want to? Yeah. So we have we have a group assignment for you, so to speak. So can you make it bigger?
Oh, I know, right? Okay, let me
Thank you.
review and then.
Awesome. So this is something we found out about the OER. So the OER, there's definitely an increase in the likelihood that students pass English 1102 using the OER. It's significant data. Furthermore, there's a strong support that OERs differentially influence older and younger students. OER seems not to influence pass rates of average age students. So really 17 to 34. And then 35 and above also struggle. So our students 16 and younger who are dual enrollment students, okay? They're struggling with our OER. And then people 35 years and older are struggling with the OER.
Except for men, right?
Except for men. So on average, women do better in all classes at C&M across